Monkey D. Dragon is Luffy's father and a character introduced in the Loguetown arc. He is a character shrouded in mystery, the lead of the Revolutionary Army, and someone whose abilities have only been hinted at. So based on the very limited information that we have about Monkey D. Dragon today, can we infer and investigate what his actual abilities are based upon the very small clues that were left to us when he first appeared on screen in Loguetown? Let's begin. Firstly, as the leader of the Revolutionary Army and someone who has trained and has many captains and leaders surrounding him, it is a fair assumption to make that Monkey D. Dragon has very significant hockey abilities, even though we've never seen them. As a superior to both Sabo and Ivankov, we can assume that he has mastered all forms of hockey, and he most likely also has Conqueror's Haki, which is likely the reason Luffy has Conqueror's Haki, if hockey is something that can be passed down. Now, the biggest question on everybody's mind is what are his Devil Fruit abilities, if any? Oda has made it very ambiguous in the series whether Monkey D. Dragon has any Devil Fruit abilities at all, and if he does, what they are. Our best guess is what was displayed when he entered the scene in the Loguetown arc. When he arrived in Loguetown and saved Luffy from Captain Smoker, he appeared with thunder, lightning, rain, and a lot of wind. It isn't quite clear of those meteorological effects which were his and which was just natural rain falling, but we can assume that based upon the way that the scene took place, that he at least had powers over the wind. So it seems logical that he would have some type of wind-based Devil Fruit. So let's take a look of what kind of Devil Fruit he could possibly have that was wind or weather-based. It seems logical to start with maybe a wind fruit or a Kaze no Mi. But because he is referred to as Dragon, he is Monkey D. Dragon, it seems more logical to assume that he doesn't have a wind fruit, which would ultimately be a Logia type. Perhaps instead, he would have something more akin to a Zoan type fruit, or a mythical Zoan. So in this case, a Paramecia fruit is out, and a potential Storm fruit is out as well. This would be the Arashi no Mi, which could be a Logia or a Paramecia, but I think it is generally unlikely that he would have a Logia type fruit or a Paramecia for that matter when he has a name that is so closely associated with an animal or a mythical animal, which is dragon. But also his name is monkey as well. Not to mention his tattoo. Dragon bears a tattoo across his face that looks like the scales of a dragon. So it seems logical that because of the visual representation on his skin, that his potential abilities would go through some type of physical transformation when accessing his abilities, which would point to some type of mythical Zoan. And if you're wondering about, well, he seems to be using some type of ability without transforming in that episode or in that scene, I'd like to point out that many mythical Zoans don't actually require a full transformation to use the powers. Take a look at Luffy. Luffy has, and it was revealed that he has a mythical Zoan, the Hito no Mi Maro Nika. Every gear that he uses before he gets to his Gear 5 transformation is him using those powers. Additionally, other mythical Zoans like Marco's Phoenix-type mythical Zoan, the Tori no Mi Model Phoenix, has been shown to be able to access his flames without doing a full or even a partial transformation. So, if Monkey D. Dragon doesn't have a Logia or a Paramecia type Devil Fruit, what kind of Zoan could it possibly be? Well, based upon his name, most would look first to Dragon type mythical Zoan Devil Fruits, particularly Dragon type mythical Zoans that could be related to rebellion or wind and storms. Drawing from Eastern mythology, one could point to the King Long, a mythical dragon who had the ability to control skies and possibly, but not mainly specifically storms, could be an example of something that he could be, perhaps, which would make his Devil Fruit the Uo no Mi model King Long. However, I would like to eliminate this as a choice, and the reason why is because it's a little bit too close to Kaido's ability. Kaido's devil fruit ability, the Uo no Mi Maroseryu, is a type of dragon in Japanese poetic mythology, but the reason why I don't want to use the King Long while Kaido has the Seiryu is because they are really close. In fact, the Seiryu seems to be in many ways derived from or a poetic localized version of the Kinglong. So it doesn't make sense, or at least perfect sense, for Monkey D. Dragon to have a devil fruit that is so much like Kaido's. We might also look at another sky dragon from Chinese mythology, which is the Shenlong, which most people are familiar with when you think about Dragon Ball Z's Shenron and how it was adapted into that program. Shenlong has the ability to control weather, can do things like control wind, rain, and lightning and storms, and has some mythology around renewal and rebirth, or the type of rebellion that is quite linked to Monkey D. Dragon's role in the Revolutionary Army. However, I think an even better place to look for Monkey D. Dragon's actual devil fruit is a little bit farther west, all the way back to the Americas, way before colonialism. We're talking about Mesoamerica. In fact, I want to look at an ancient dragon from that era, which is called the Quetzalcoatl. The Quetzalcoatl is an ancient dragon that represents renewal, wind, storms, and rebellion, and is often seen in that cultural tradition as an anti-tyrannical beast and a bringer of change, which has some strong similarities to what Monkey D. Dragon does as the leader of the Revolutionary Army. It is a dragon of wisdom and civilization. This fits a little bit better than Eastern dragons that seem to be part of a hierarchy that doesn't seem to be intentionally pointed to within the One Piece mythology. Of course, Shenlong does have some of the traits that would be associated with rebellion and even being related to storms, but his relationship to the other deity or divine dragons of honor seem to point to an intentionality that I don't think is present in the One Piece story, since they're part of a team. Oda doesn't seem to be trying to create a 5-dragon mythology symbolism in his own story. The only one we have presently is Kaido's dragon and Momonosuke's dragon, which aren't really a part of the team that Shenlong seems to be a part of, so there is no real reason to be tied to that culture when there doesn't seem to be a symbolic connection between that particular dragon or team of dragons and One Piece. But going back to the Quetzalcoatl, not only is it a dragon that is about rebellion and being anti-tyrannical and about changing things for the better, it is also a dragon that has some relationship to monkeys. Let's hear this out as I explain. The Quetzalcoatl, as a guardian deity, has dominion over the ancient calendars for the Mayan people, which has a day of the week which is related to monkeys. So, in a way, we could say that this Quetzalcoatl is over or has dominion over the monkey. And since Monkey D. Dragon is both dragon and monkey, it would make sense that both of those two animals are represented in the symbolism of Dragon's devil fruit ability. Additionally, monkeys in that Mesoamerican culture represented a lot of what can be said about who Luffy is as sun god Nika, or as the holder of the Hito no Mi Maro Nika. Monkeys represent fun and mockery and silliness, and the Quetzalcoatl represents contrarily evolved wisdom, and mythologically were the creators of man who were a step above the monkey, a failed experiment. So the type of duality that the Quetzalcoatl has with the monkey could be a reference to who Luffy is as the son of Monkey D. Dragon, the Reformer. Additionally, and I don't think this was lost on many of you looking at Mesoamerica, it is a pretty good place to look for the background behind Monkey D. Dragon's devil fruit, because Oda has said himself that Luffy was inspired by, or perhaps would have been, a modern-day Brazilian. Brazil is very close to Mesoamerica, and so it seems logical that Luffy's father would have a devil fruit that was inspired by a creature from the Americas as well. Ancient Mesoamerica being the home of the Aztecs and Mayan people, which is today Mexico, which is also the home of Luffy's live-action actor Iñaki Godoy. Also, it's actually a dragon that has control over storms and rain and wind and is the embodiment of reform and rebellion. Furthermore, let's take a look at Monkey D. Dragon's tattoo again. Yes, that tattoo does look like dragon skills, which would indicate that he probably has some kind of Zoan type devil fruit ability and that he's associated with dragons, but I would also like to point out that the pattern itself seems to be a dragon scale design or a pattern that mirrors a lot of the patterns that are typically seen in Mesoamerican ancient artifacts. Eastern patterns tend to be more ornate. That kind of diamond type shape with a dot or an eye in the middle is often seen in Mayan, Aztec, or Mesoamerican cultural items from the past. So it is possible that the link that we were looking for the whole time was in the tattoo. So while we're still unaware, I think the Quetzalcoatl is the best guess for Monkey D. Dragon's devil fruit. His devil fruit very well may be the Ryu no Mi model Quetzalcoatl. Do you think we got this right, or should we be looking somewhere else in history for the inspiration behind Monkey D. Dragon's devil fruit ability? I'm not sure, but while the answer isn't so clear, I think the Quetzalcoatl is our very best bet.